Some of you may already be familiar with the mysterious sickness that seemed to target American diplomats and CIA operatives based in Cuba in 2015. The sickness came to be known as Havana syndrome. For those of you who already know about the strange events that took place in Cuba, there were more cases reported elsewhere that you may not have heard about, but more on that later. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the story that originally starts in Cuba, here's what went down. In attempts to further improve their diplomatic relationship, the US and Cuba both reopened their embassies in each other's countries in July 2015. Everything appeared to be going well, until December 2016, when an American CIA operative started hearing a strange noise in his apartment. The man in question put up with the noise for as long as he could, until he eventually ended up going to the American Embassy's health center in Havana, suffering from nausea, headaches, and dizziness. At first, it was thought that crickets or cicadas, another noise-making insect, were the source of the strange sound. Here's what they sound like. However, it would soon turn out that insects were not to blame. A report on the incident was sent to Washington, but nothing came of it. Then, in February 2017, two more agents reported hearing strange sounds, which included buzzing, something high-pitched, and even a noise that closely resembled marbles rolling along the floor. In these cases, the symptoms were more significant. Not only did they suffer from headaches and dizziness, they also experienced motor issues and tinnitus, which most often manifests as a constant ringing noise in your ears. Suspiciously, the strange, harmful noises only appeared to be affecting US personnel based at the Havana embassy, which helped remove the cicada and cricket theory, since those would have been heard by everyone. The symptoms were very much like patients who had damaged inner ears. The Cuban government denied any involvement when confronted by the head of the US embassy, and it does seem rather strange that they would consider targeting Americans in this way, considering all that they had gained by rebuilding an economic relationship with the United States. An investigation took place, but no evidence to link the Cubans or even the Russians was uncovered. March came, and even more US officials were reporting the same symptoms. There were even cases where individuals didn't report the strange noises, but still had the same signs that they were targeted. September rolled around, and the total had now reached 16 agents from the CIA, as well as up to 10 other US civil servants. Worryingly, months after their original symptoms started, more began to develop. Victims now started to experience insomnia, sickness, loss of consciousness, nosebleeds, vision impairment, memory loss, and the inability to concentrate. They even started showing signs of brain damage. If by now you're still not convinced something suspicious was going on, the fact the doctor the US sent out to treat and evaluate the victims also suffered the same symptoms too might just do it. In 2019, the brain scan results of the US Embassy staff who became ill in this mysterious case were published. The scans taken from 40 US government workers revealed that some brain features appeared different to those of healthy volunteers. The images of a victim's brain showed that on average they had lower volumes of white matter, which is the tissue made from nerve bundles that send signals around the brain. They also showed microstructural differences and other abnormalities that could affect auditory and visuospatial processing. Eventually, it was revealed that 14 Havana-based Canadian officials also fell victim. As a result, the American and Canadian governments withdrew all non-essential staff. The main suspects were Cuba, Russia, and China, but there was still no evidence to support these theories, and all denied any involvement. Both the American and Canadian governments were certain that an unknown radio or electromagnetic emitting device was being used. They were even able to record it. Here is a short sample. You can see why crickets and cicadas were originally considered. Even with the sound now being captured, they still had no idea what exactly was causing it, and the recordings didn't seem to further the investigation. That now brings us up to speed. Here is where the plot thickens. In late May 2018, news broke that the same symptoms of the mysterious Havana syndrome had been reported at a United States consulate in southern China. In some cases, these people and their families were evacuated as early as April 2018. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spoke at a hearing of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and said that the symptoms of the first American victim in Guangzhou are very similar and entirely consistent with the medical indications that have taken place to Americans working in Cuba. Along with family members, there were roughly 170 American diplomats or employees based in Guangzhou. A senior American official said that a sizable number of these would undergo testing by the State Department doctors, who arrived on May 31st of that year. It seems like that testing must have shown something significant, because shortly after the doctors arrived, more news began to emerge stating that 9 more US diplomats were also evacuated, all reporting the same symptoms. One of the only outspoken victims was a man called Mark Lindsay. Lindsay was an engineering security officer at the American consulate in Guangzhou. He was one of those 9 evacuated along with his wife. Going back as far as a year, he and his wife said they experienced headaches, sleeplessness and nausea after hearing the strange noise, which they described as marbles bouncing and hitting a floor, then rolling on an incline with a static sound. Mr. Lindsay believes his position in the diplomatic security department could have made him a target. You see, before joining the Foreign Service in 2011, Mr. Lindsay had worked with the International Republican Institute, promoting democratic reforms in Ukraine and Georgia, 2 countries where Russia has denounced American involvement. He also said there was classified material that pointed to the country that had been carrying out the attacks, but the State Department denied him access to the documents. He went further to suggest that top officials know exactly which country is behind it all, adding that he believes it wasn't Cuba or China, but another country, one which the Secretary of State and President do not want to confront. Years after returning from China, there is still no official word about what happened to Mr. Lindsay and the other potential victims. In 2019, an article was published that gave some details about the current status of Mr. Lindsay. Sadly, at one point his headaches became so extreme, he ended up being referred to Dr. Tina Shetty, the neurologist for the New York Giants American football team. She said that she had never seen a case like his before, adding that he displayed symptoms which were consistent with those seen in mild traumatic brain injuries. Further news articles were released in December 2020, discussing a US government report on what had happened in Cuba, and indicated that the mysterious noise and subsequent illness is a little closer to being solved. The report officially stated that the mystery illness suffered by US diplomats in Cuba could have been the result of a microwave energy weapon. While not conclusively stating it as fact, this is still a pretty major development, considering at one point insects were thought to be responsible. The report by the National Academies of Sciences did not point the finger of blame. However, it did say that research into the effects of pulsed radio frequency energy was carried out by the Soviet Union more than 50 years ago. In July 2021, the United States Department of State confirmed they were conducting an investigation into more alleged attacks in the Austrian city of Vienna. Over 20 US officials were affected, all reporting the same Havana syndrome type symptoms. Not every instance of Havana syndrome has been so comfortably far away from home. A few days after Thanksgiving in 2019, an official from the White House was taking her dog for a walk in Arlington, Virginia, when her dog started convulsing. The official then started to experience an intense headache and ringing in her ears as the side of her face began to tingle. A more recent domestic incident took place within close range of the White House in November 2020. Another official was stricken by the same intense headache and ringing in the ears as they walked by the ellipse, the lawn on the south side of the White House itself. It's been reported that experts at the Pentagon are now working on a wearable device to detect incoming attacks, and no doubt they're trying to figure out a way to shield or counteract against this pretty worrying technology.